Sorry, no, I was waiting for Jason anyway, so. All right, good evening. Welcome to the study session for March 18th, 2024. We'll begin with the presentation regarding the fiscal year 2025 budget from Andrew Reeves.
Thank you very much. And first off, I just want to thank our staff for, especially Jackie and Courtney and department heads, as we've been trying to do our very best to limp along without our finance director, who left behind a very well-run financial city as far as the reserves we have in place. And I think you saw in our presentation last week with our health insurance, the great reserves that were built up, maybe even too robust in certain areas. And that's good. That's a great way to lead an organization. But at the same time, some of the tools that were put in place are very, very, very complex. So it's been quite the process getting that in place. And I wanted to start off maybe with a little bit of a story. So in my last city of Santaquin, we happen to have a operator of gas stations there that had a contest. It just happens to be an operator of gas stations here locally now, the Maverick Corporation. And in the city of Santaquin, this Maverick gas station, where adventure starts, decided to give away a Lamborghini. And once you know that somebody in the city of Santaquin won that Lamborghini, $380,000 vehicle given to somebody in our community. And it was great fanfare and great opportunity for someone in our community to inherit something such a great, powerful machine. And within 2 hours of that wonderful experience, that Lamborghini was in a car wreck, having not yet been insured. And that was because it is quite different driving a Lamborghini than it is driving your Honda Accord or whatever it is that you might be driving. While the roads may be the same and the how you get home might be the same, the tool that you're driving is quite different. And that is what I've sort of experienced and felt like as I have been digging into this budget. We do have a very robust budget and this great budget, but at the same time, it is a very complex budget as we go along. And I'll kind of explain that. I'm going to break away from the presentation and get into some of the spreadsheets that I'm trying to create for you. But I hope that this is an interactive discussion where you can ask questions and I can get information out. That being said, I'm not where I would like to be, and I'll be right up front with that as far as getting you the information that you need to make the decisions. But my goal and my hope is to get you that information in the long term in perpetuity so that you can have a tool that works for you going forward. And part of that process is trying to figure out how things work. And to council members who have known council many times, you probably have a very good understanding how our fund structure works and how our budgets are laid out. But generally speaking, when you're dealing with a budget, you generally have what's called the general fund. And within that, you have a series of departments. And then you have special revenue funds. Those might be for the collection of special revenues such as road use tax and local sales tax and whatnot. And then you bring that money in and then you divvy it out based on how it should be utilized. You have capital project funds that you can take care of and you can take your capital projects on. You can build a new sewer treatment plant. You can build a new K Street or whatever it might be. You can have those rolled in. And sometimes those are segregated based on the fund, but generally speaking, they're capital projects and they have the same look and feel and formality in how they manage. And then you have what's called enterprise funds. Those are funds where you really treat it like a business. That's like your utilities, your sewer departments, your water departments, your electrical departments. They are supposed to be treated like a business where you have revenues that come in from user fees and you pay expenses out from user fees. And while there might be some overhead that goes one way or another, generally those are supposed to be treated like a business. And so those are the type of things that we're trying to figure out because we have a fund for everything. And everything is in its own unique fund, which is great when you're trying to track the dollars associated with a given project. So, for example, our sewer treatment plant, when we built our sewer treatment plant, all the money goes into one fund and then we utilize it. And when it's all said and done, that money can come back. Great. But when you have a fund for everything instead of departments for everything, it can become really challenging really fast. Because instead of money coming into the general fund and then you have a department that you pay things out of, you have to go through a series of transfers. You transfer money from the general fund into community development fund or into the public safety fund, and then those transfers, internal to those, they might have a capital project that they transfer money out of, and or they might pay an overhead. That's something called cost accounting, where you want to allocate the costs. So if we have IT services that are provided across many funds, you might have each one of those funds pay a portion of that IT department's budget. And so you have lots of individual departments all kicking money back to an internal services department, if you will. And what can complicate that even more so is that you might have a department that has, instead of them being broken out, you might be transferring out for many purposes. Maybe it's going out for IT, maybe it's going out for capital projects, all coming out of one bucket. So one bucket might say transfers out. And where does that money go? It goes into several locations. And you might have a transfers in, and that's coming into IT from many locations. And it takes a very talented mind to understand how that is all worked out and broken out so that you can tick a tie. Because I'm a tick a tie guy. I have to see if money comes out here, it has to come in here and tick a tie it together. And I can't, I have a really hard time trusting any automation in that process. Call it PTSD, if you will, but I hired a finance director years ago, and while whiz bang, great person, took my way of doing things and automated it. And all of a sudden, if you lose one thing, then you lose the integrity of the whole thing. And so it made me very nervous and very cautious. And though I haven't really found any issues with the automation steps and the process we go through, I think Andy did a fantastic job and is more talented than I am. I'm not sure, I guess what I'm saying is, in coming into this, I'm not sure if I'm trying to learn the Iowa way, the Indianola way, or the Andy way, but I'm trying to figure it all out and the right way of going about getting there. And it's sort of an excavation process as I'm trying to dig into the budget and seeing what it reveals. So I'll get into the budget aspect, but one of the very first things that I know that Councilman Richardson is very concerned about and talking about is right off the bat, property taxes. We treat our property taxes as very precious dollars coming in. Every dollar should be allocated and it should be planned out and used in a precious format, because we should never be asking the public to pay for anything that is wasteful in any manner. And I've never, in my opinion, I think we have one of the most efficient and well-run organizations that I've seen. We use the dollars extremely well, and we're very tight with the use of those dollars, and that's great. But at the same time, we have all sorts of pressures on us. We have pressures externally from state legislative changes. We have external pressures and inflation and from the federal level. And the economy in general. We have pressures on trying to compete with our neighboring cities and making sure that we have a good environment that invites business in. And so trying to figure all of that out. But one of the first things that we need to do is really make sure that we share our story. And just mention that to Amy here behind me is one of the cities that done a really good job at sharing property taxes and their story was Mason City. And we really kind of look to the lead, especially on how to share that story about what property taxes are, how they're applied, because the information that we share with the public is state mandated, and and may not actually be accurate from the stance of, yes, your general fund tax levy might be going down, but your overall tax burden might be higher, and it gets a little bit misleading if you're not sharing a complete picture. And it's usually pretty unique to each city that you're dealing with. You want to give as much freedom to the cities to be able to share that story with their constituents as you possibly can, because one city might have a brand new sewer treatment plant, and another city might have a brand new water treatment plant, and two things are different, and they might have needs in other areas. So it's sharing that story. Property tax dollars as a percentage or overall allocation. I think that's something that you had asked for, something that we really ought to share is when I pay $1 of property taxes, where does that dollar go? And of course, it goes beyond, it's not just to any one entity. In fact, there's many entities that we receive a sliver of that dollar. The school districts receives the largest portion. The city receives a large portion. But Warren County also does, as well as DMAC and the assessor's office and ag and a whole bunch of other leases between. And so we just want to make sure that we're sharing that story. And then of the dollars that we actually receive, how do we use those dollars and how we allocate them? We allocate the majority of ours for public safety purposes, 38% to police and 24% to fire. So every dollar that comes in really is going to building a community that's safe for our residents. Of course, we also want to have nice amenities such as our veterans pool, our library, and then, of course, we set money aside for capital improvement projects, for our community development, which is really trying to create a golden goose with more economic development that would come in and more building. And then administration, we try to keep as tight as possible in use of those dollars.
Can I just ask one question to back up? Can you go back to that last slide?
Sure.
One of the things that my conversations with some folks outside of Indianola city limits is that told that we pay no county property taxes. And obviously we do. In fact, the person I was talked to raises cattle and said, well, I don't know if you've ever looked at your tax statements here in Indianola, but we pay a brucellosis tax as part of the taxes that are collected from city residences as well. And I don't raise cattle. So, I mean, point I'm trying to make here is that every citizen in Indianola pays a Warren County property tax, and the services that we receive are minimal from the county. I'm not trying to say the county's wrong or anything else, but that's just the way the tax system is set up.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, the county has jurisdiction over the entire county. And they rely upon the cities who've incorporated to take many of the responsibilities unto itself. Because when you have a collection of residents that come together, they might want to have their own police department or fire department or their parks or whatever it may be. And so you incorporate that very purpose. And so there are more burdens, more costs, but they're shared by a pool of a cluster of larger pool of residents. And that creates your tax base, your cash cow, if you will, that actually does help the rest of the I think you make a really good point because we are more in partnership with the county than most people realize.
Yeah.
Anything that is good for the city of Indianola is also good for the county. If we invest in bringing a new business into Norwalk, that's good for the county, not just Norwalk.
Right.
A new business coming into Carlisle, same for Indianola. And so we also can find greater efficiencies when we work together, such as a fuel depot and being able to share with the school district and the city. So recognizing that we are good neighbors and that we are us, that's really important. And so I appreciate all of our partners because again, they need to use these dollars wisely as well. And that's why when we look at the school district and raising taxes for a new school, we recognize that's a need. And so they went forth and perpetuated some dollars. And so we take turns and we try to work with our partners the best we can. We don't overburden the residents we serve because we all serve the same resident. As far as the tax form for this year, it is a new form because of House File 718. It's a little bit different in its layout, and there's certain restrictions on property taxes that weren't in place before. This is a little bit hard to read, but oops, I think I went the wrong order. So right there, the first one was the max levy that the city could have was $8.10 for its general fund purposes. And our growth rate, these are coming up the wrong word, so I put them out of sync and whatnot, but our growth rate was actually 4.54%. And because we exceeded a certain amount of growth, there's a certain penalty to the amount of taxes that we can bring into the community. That penalty for us is 2%. And so when you go through all of the calculations, the amount of levy that actually comes to the city, instead of being $8.10, is $7.94. Because of that reduction in growth. So we actually had a 2.4% increase instead of a 4.54% increase because that 2% rate is off. That's for the general fund alone. And so when you look at that, you go, that's a lowering of taxes. But we have to still meet the bills and pay we have to meet our debt service. We have to pay for our employees. We have to make sure the roads are still plowed and the lawns are still mowed and everything else that we need to do. And so there are different levies that allow us to do that. And so when we share information to the public, but we only share a select portion of that information, it gives the appearance that we're lowering taxes when in fact we're trying to perpetuate or even trying to set ourselves up for the future or the future investment. Other levies that are available to the city include, okay, so 7.94 is what is capped off for the general fund. But we have many other levies as well that are inclusive of, sorry, I got my glasses because I'm getting older here. Liability and property, self-insurance costs. We have the ability to utilize some levy for law enforcement and retirements, employee benefits, FICA and IPERS, and other benefits as well. And then lastly, the use of the debt service levy so that we can meet the overall needs of the city. And that's one of the things that's on the agenda this evening is a concept that Mr. Lyon shared with all of us, which was we historically have set dollars aside each year to make our vehicle purchases. We plan accordingly and we buy what we need for that year. But now we're restricted in being able to make those purchases year after year after year. So the only way to really give us the flexibility to do that is to be more thoughtful in our purchases, but then you have to use a debt instrument to do so. So we have a 5-year plan to purchase our vehicles for our location going forward that we have put into a debt service levy, but we've also created it under a 5-year amortization so that in effect, we're still paying each year's worth the way we historically have been. And we're planning out our purchases for a long period of time. The downside, that's the upside is we're maintaining the rotation and that keeps our police officers and our firefighters in the best possible equipment for life safety purposes. You don't want them breaking down in a vehicle that's not well maintained or having vehicles that are out of warranty because that raises a lot of maintenance costs. But with that, it creates a situation where now instead of setting money aside more easily year by year by year, we have to use a debt instrument and pay off that debt, which creates an interest cost that's new to the residents. So it looks like a savings, but it really isn't a savings. And now we have to go into debt for it. Use part of our city credit card, if you will. And that's a challenge. And that's a law of unintended consequences. When you make a decision here and I don't know if the right analogy, you poke a pig and it squirts out someplace else, right? And so that's the realities of trying to fit into this and make our budgets work. And so our largest revenue source to the city for its general fund purposes is the general fund tax levy. as it's projected right now, of course, the council right now has the amount that we have recommended. The council may not increase it to that amount. You'll have to listen to the public and listen to the presentations that are made and get into the budget yourself and dig in before you ultimately come to that conclusion. But now that the notice has been put out, there is a max levy that you could go to. And assuming the max levy was followed, it would allow for $5.4 million coming into the general fund, 110,000 into the liability and property. Eggland is really the service areas for our fire department where they serve outside of city limits. That's where that comes in. Small amount, $5,800. Police and retirement, or police and fire retirement, FICA and IPERS, other employee benefits, and then the new debt service one. The property tax increase that is being shown on the mailer that went out actually showed an 8.37% decrease. And sorry, I got the typo though, in 2025. It's actually not a decrease. It's a decrease to the general fund portion, but it's not a decrease overall. What we're really showing is a 8.3% increase. And the previous year's increase was 5.1%. General fund liability insurance, like I said, was 110. And this offsets the effects of the House File 718. And the next step is the public hearing on April 1st. The council does not have to increase it to that whole amount, but may. Where does that fit in line with other metro cities? Our total tax liability burden would be $14.65. And that is below Norwalk and Carlisle, but it's still on the high end for the metro area. And that actually does make a lot of sense in the fact that we have our assessed value of our homes is lower than the other cities in the metro area. So they have higher amount of overall base by which you're applying your rate. And so they bring more money in because of that. Our home values are a little bit lower, or a little more depressed. And so having a higher rate allows you to offset that. And of course, they have all their other revenue streams in higher lost funds and more economic vitality in the metro area. And so you have to offset that somehow. Something that I thought was interesting is trying to compare where we are in our property tax rates as compared to the cost of living, CPIU. And in over a 3-year period, over the last 3 years, CPIU has gone up 16.8%. If the council does employ the full amount on the property tax increase, we'd be about 16.99%. So very close, almost dead on to CPI in that respect. With that, how the budget works, it's basically, as I indicated at the very beginning, you have several different fund types. You have a general fund, you have special revenue funds, debt service funds, capital funds, and enterprise funds, and internal services. Some are considered governmental funds and other are proprietary funds. And that's the difference, because you want to, in your audit, if you're ever looking at your audit, you'll see everything lumped together that's governmental, and you'll see everything business type. And that's what the proprietary is business type funds. And I color coded them because the tool that I'm trying to create is also color coded. And that's really where I'm getting at. I'm going to break out of the presentation here a little bit to show you the tool that I'm starting to put together so that you can have this at your disposal and you yourself can play with it and whatnot and make adjustments and changes on the fly. But it's not quite there yet. I'll kind of describe that. So this is just a different layout to the spreadsheet. It's more of a layout that follows a financial statement. So this is really your income statement or P&L if you're used to that from the private sector. Okay, escape out of this and jump over to the tool. So basically, I'm going to expand them all out. In the general fund, you have, in this particular case, we have several revenues, and then we have different funds. So general fund is the biggest one, it's one at the top. The first thing I'm trying to do in this, I wanted to ensure that you have a few years history. So this is 2021, 22, and 23. So you have 3 years of history that you'll be able to look at. This right here is the budget for 2024. And then if I expand this out at the top, we have these expansion areas. You can see where we are as of halfway through the year of 2024. This is as of December 31st of 2024. So you have 3 years of true history, this is our halfway point. And this right here is our budget for this year, our budget for next year, as well as the difference. So you can see the difference between this year's budget and last year's budget, and you can see what's jumping up at the line item level. And then the difference as a percentage as well. So you can see the dollar amount difference and the percentage difference. It starts off as would a normal financial statement with your revenues at the top. And with each department, I've made it so that, or department or fund, I've made it so that you can expand it out and get more detail, or you can collapse them all down. And I don't have this completely done yet, but you can see it all by department. So when I hand this to you, it'll be collapsed down. So you can just see the department revenues, expenditures, and the net effect on your fund, your net income or loss, if you will. And that'll be all the way through. As you continue down through each department, you have community development department. There are some departments that are no longer used, but because they were in the historical data, I've included them. Just so you know, so if you see zeros here, that's why. And of course, there's things that Jackie and I are still working on, things that how we're going to be dispersing dollars, and some policy related discussions that we want to have with council this evening as well. Anything in red, I'm still working on. That is the transfers coming in and out. So I want to talk a little bit. Well, I'll scroll through this and then I'll talk about the transfers. So once you get through the general fund, there are other general fund related items, like public safety is its own fund, but it's actually part of the general fund. And the nice aspect of that is that if public safety doesn't spend all their money, it doesn't necessarily all roll back into the general fund. They can save up. That's good. A healthy thing from some aspects in that you can, you may see some organizations that will go out and spend all their money in May and June so that they can utilize their budget. When departments can utilize their budgets and their budgets stay with them, they can save and plan more appropriately so that maybe they can build up for a couple of years and then make a little bit larger purchase. They're not trying to just go and spend money just to spend money. And so I think the way that it's structured is in some respects is very healthy for that very purpose. But you notice that I created the next fund in a light blue. On the left side is a dark blue. That's because it's still a general fund item. And then it goes to the fire, it goes back to the dark blue, just so you can see the breakup from fund to fund. And then when it gets past the general fund, if we'll go down and jump down really quick to some non-general fund, road use tax. That's a special revenue. It's green, and then it goes. We just have different colors. When it's another fund, it's still green, but it's just trying to give you intuitive so that your eye follows it and you don't get lost in the fact that okay, I just didn't jump into another fund here, but this actually does roll up in the audit to something else. Okay. With that in place, the very first thing that I do or have historically done is as a finance manager in the past is I start off with debt. All of us have, a home or our homes or whatever. We have mortgages. We have to pay our debt, right? You don't pay your debt, you're out on your butt. And so that is always the number one priority the city has to do as well. We have to maintain good credit ratings, and we always historically have. And the credit rating the city enjoys right now is a very good AA credit rating. But part of that is making sure that we have a spreadsheet for everything, by the way, amortization schedules that lay out, and so you want to try to bring those into your tool so that you can see what your debt service is for this year, because your debt service sometimes decreases. Some of the bonds are structured so that the payment goes up as you grow. Sometimes they're just flat. Sometimes you can pay something off early. And so you want to be able to have all of your debt in one place so that you can see. But this right here, just for simplicity's sake for this year, I made sure that we had all of our principal, interest, fees, and those are all ticking and tying back to by account number into the general fund to make sure they're paid. And then also to, let's see, going back to the main spreadsheet, anytime I'm transferring money out and it's going out of one place and into another place, as an accountant, it just drives me crazy if those aren't just perfectly, I don't like the round or anything like that. Those things should tick and tie. And so having transfers that tie in and are easily mapped are essential. And so basically I started to put together this table of all the transfers in. So you might have $200,000 coming into the community development department. It's coming from the road use tax fund and the sewer fund. Each are contributing $100,000. This is all automatic. So if I happen to fat finger or something, I'm in the community development department and accidentally tell Charlie that, you know what, you in your community development department accidentally took away the $200,000 that was being transferred into your department. When I go back to that, it'll automatically show up as an imbalance. And so most of those are reconciled, but you can tell how forensically I've been trying to push the dust away and get in there. And some of the work that Jackie's been doing has been fantastic in that same realm as well. So I'm going to undo this so I don't hurt Charlie. I don't want to do that. Okay, so that's generally speaking the tool. And one of the things in the tool that the council really needs to see, I think there's two key elements that you need to see as a council going forward, is your growth by department. That, and I showed this to the department heads this morning, and I'll make it prettier and a little bit more understandable. But basically, what I'm pulling out of the main thing is your growth by department, both in true dollars and in a percentage. And then I have the exact same thing, but without any staffing costs, without any new personnel or any salary changes, just the operational dollars. And found that in some cases we're isolating capital projects, and in other cases they're rolled into the department. And that's a danger too, because if I throw a project to put a new accounting system, ERP system in, and it rolls into Jason's IT one-time cost and Jason's IT budget, suddenly his budget looks like it just blew up because there's a capital cost that is showing as operational and it makes it look like he's jumping. And so trying to refine those back down is important as well. And the reason that this is such a key element is because overall, you as a council need to see what your revenues are and determine, you may need to dial those up or you may need to dial those back. That's your council prerogative to do that. But if you dial something back and you say, okay, as a city, we're going to cap revenues, we're going to hold it to a 5% increase in our revenues this year, and you start seeing departments that are above 5%. Now you have a policy decision. You're going, okay, why is a budget going up more than 5%? Maybe I need to go back to that department and dial it back. Or I can see that, hey, maybe I have deficiencies here. And I'll use Santaquin as an example. We had a really connected chief of police in the last community, and they had the best of everything. I think we have a chief of police here that actually knows how to do drywall and change light bulbs. So I appreciate what we have here in our community. But one of my previous chiefs had the best of everything, and I had a public works director that had duct tape and baling wire on everything. And it got to the point that the council was doubling anything that the public works director asked and cutting in half anything that the police chief asked because they didn't know what else to do. Well, you want to be able to see where you sit as a council on the different on that budget. And we never did ever cut the police department because public safety is extremely important. But we did cap it. And the city was growing by 8 to 12% per year. We were really growing quite fast. And so we capped it at a certain amount, like 4 or 5%. So police department still grew, but we are allowing other departments to grow more rapidly. And you can see where that line is so that you can make good decisions along the way. And that's what's critical on this whole thing. And I want to make sure that when I give you something, it's going to have integrity behind it. I don't want to have a gaping hole because something wasn't taken correctly. And I think it's important to see it from both the full department as well as the non-staff components of the department. So you can see what's going up and down there. Also trying to understand property taxes and how they're getting in and applying and how they're getting transferred from department to department as well, because we are very property tax driven here. So that's the tool that I'm trying to create. Hopefully we have an accounting system that is a little bit easier to use. What we have right now is an adequate system, and that we use Cassell. We have something called My Viewpoint. Department directors put their requests in. It comes to a certain level. If we want to make any changes, I have to push it back to their level. I make the changes and move it back up to your level, and then which is because there's only 2 levels. It's directors or council, and then you hit the macros on Andy's spreadsheet. It sucks it all down automatically and goes through about a 3-minute process, 5-minute process to suck that information back down, change the sheets, and then you're trying to see, okay, does it still tick and tie? Is it still balanced? So consequently, I've done that so many times this weekend, I can't read it anymore. Along with that, we're tying into our 5-year capital plan as well, and making sure that those things are addressed, as well as we're addressing all of the requests that came before the council in your council study session, where you are evaluating and ranking, and those are all taking time to an account number to make sure that we didn't miss anything, and nothing fell into a hole there as well. So I'm going to go back to the presentation now. Try to get through the rest of it so you can ask all any questions and give me further direction as I continue down this road. But the council did go through its ranking with its projects, and those are outlined there, and its vehicles and equipment. Of course, all the vehicles and equipment we're trying to roll into the 5-year plan that's going through the debt service, as well as the personnel requests as well. And that's for new positions. All of those were ranked by the council, and as I showed in the other screen, we were taking and tying those all back. I'm probably going to go to that point right now because one of the policy discussions items that I know I need to get a quick answer from the council on to give us some direction is hotel motel. I want to talk about that, but before I get into that, give me both barrels. What could I do better or differently other than get you more information more quickly so that you can start playing with the stool yourself?
When do you expect to be able to send that spreadsheet to us?
I was hoping to have it a long time ago. As soon as it's ready, we'll get it to you.
2 days, a week?
My goal is within the week.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I like the spreadsheet. I like how it's broke down by departments. It'll be a lot of data to digest. You're looking at your line, what there was 1,000 lines roughly? 2,000 lines. Okay. Even more data. Yeah, it's just gonna be a lot to digest at first.
Yep, it will be. And the thing is about a budget, there's really, you have the ability to be flexible in your budget throughout the year. Not only should you be amending your budget on a regular basis, at least twice a year, if not quarterly, you should be able to make the decisions. You should be able to make decisions on the fly. You should have flexibility to seize opportunities. And if the economy tanks or something happens, you should have the ability to retract things in. That's the goal. So that you're really steering the ship. Hotel,
Before you get down too far down the road, unlike spreadsheets, I hate them, but other than that,
well, the thing is, we don't want to get you to the basketball level where you're.
Right.
That's why all those spreadsheets will be collapsed into departments where it just says revenue expenditures. And you only have to expand it out to look at the ones that you want.
right. And that's where I'm coming from. And that was the reason my question, I don't know if you remember, maybe a year ago, might not have been that long ago, when I asked Andy, what would be our year-end revenue? I mean, what was our expenditures? What was our revenue? And what was the carryover? And I never got an answer. I'm not blaming Andy on that.
Nope.
But I'm assuming that somewhere along the line, we're gonna move away from these funds to departments. Is that what I'm kind of gathering?
You still need to have funds.
I understand that.
And in some cases, they're still good, but it's one of those things that it's really hard to change your accounting. We're looking, one of the council fairly highly ranked projects was a new accounting system,
Right.
ERP. That actually came out pretty high, and so
I don't even know what that is, but I know it did.
we'll be looking at that, but that ties to a balance sheet question, which I should have covered, and I'm glad you brought it up, because every fund has its beginning balance and its ending balance.
Right.
So basically you have your, this is the ending balance this is the balance as of December 31st, 2023,
Right.
which is the halfway through the fiscal year. And of course, we're still trying to fill holes and all that type of thing. And so this would be the effect of next year's budget on it and what our fund balance would be at the end. This will be, if some of the, we went into the IWC, for example, not knowing exactly what the budget would be. We had a pretty good idea from what the financials are. Well, we can see where it's going, where it's trending, and then you can see,
Sure.
does it turn red or does it turn green?
Mhm.
And of course, they're color coded back to anything blues, general fund.
Right.
So,
Well, and again, I fall back on my previous experience. The council it was fairly easy to know what our revenues were, what our expenditures were, and what our carryovers, what percentage of that expenditures was part of our budget. It was easy then to know what we carried over into the next year, whether that can be applied to different departments and how we can allocate that and how we can use that. And it makes it a lot easier to follow where we are. And that's why I asked for the percentages as well on each of those budgets. Because without that other information, I needed to know personally how much we were spending in each department.
well, I think this is one thing where the council does not, because if you only look at cash
Right.
and how much cash is in the bank, you don't have good visibility.
We don't have a good visibility. I
You don't
understand
know
that.
what your trends are. You don't know, maybe you're saving up cash. Maybe you just spent a lot of cash on a big project. Cash is only a snapshot in
Right.
time. You need to know trends, you need to know revenues, expenditures, and percent through the year. You might have something that is 0% all the way through the year until you pay your property tax, your property insurance. And you make that one-time payment and now you're 100% spent. So everything has a story as well.
It does.
That's why some things are paid equally each month.
And our income isn't on a monthly basis. It's twice a year whenever the property taxes.
Exactly. And so you need to have a certain amount of cash reserves to be able to cover until the next revenue. It's kind of like getting paid monthly instead of bi-weekly. I remember my dad, when I was a kid, got paid monthly and boy, those last few days of the month. So
Yeah.
we ate really good the first week of the year, though, or first week of the month. Other questions, thoughts, concerns before I go to hotel motel?
There was a tab on the spreadsheet, Ben, where it saw like rental funds or something along those lines.
Sorry, I got too many things open. Revenues?
Revenues, okay.
So this is showing, and this is again for me doing the ticking and tying, all that. This is really to help me. The things that are helpful to you, I want to keep in here, but I don't want to overcomplicate anything. But this is all the general fund levy and the general fund coming in and how we're utilizing the general fund through the transfers. This is just the tracking right now. Again, with each type of property tax coming in. Ag land, retirement, which is really a benefit for debt service.
Where's that more granular tab at?
So I'll go through them all really quick. So I have fund balance, maybe these are all the transfers, department to department. I've been working on revenues a little bit. This was, I used just for a chart on where we stood as a city with our comparable cities. Not only do we transfer transfers, but we transfer property taxes too to other departments. And so I'm trying to tick and tie those. This is our debt service. And then of course you have the growth by department. Of course, there might be other pages that come in here, and then your master budget. This is the master page that is being worked on. And when you can collapse those things down so that you have a very simple, these are all the general fund revenues right here, the total money revenue for the general fund right now until we fix all of the holes and whatnot, is projected right there. So we're still working. So with that said, one of the things that the council did last year is in hotel motel tax, you received the recommendation from our auditors that required that we put money only into those items that create a return on investment. I know a lot of charities look to the hotel motel tax and put applications in. And so the directive was really to step away from having an application process where it's tied to charitable giving, but it's really going to some of the pillars of our community that we know bring in a lot of people each year. This year, we're anticipating bringing in about 231,000 in in hotel motel tax. 2/7 of that goes to Bravo. 2/7 of that goes to Catch Des Moines. That leaves 3/7 left over that we can allocate. Historically, the council has set aside 25,000 to go to Parks and Rec. And that's a typo, so 25,000. And that leaves 74,000 that can spend this year. And so trying to determine what those are, there's a couple of things I wanted to point out. One, from time to time, we had some items come up where it would have been nice to have some economic development dollars so we could come to the council and say, hey, can we allocate this towards these and have some flexibility in the budget? And so I do have a new line item at the bottom, council unallocated for economic development. You can let that build up or you can utilize it in a given year. We have certain studies, certain things that may pop up. So I kind of recommend that you set a little bit of money aside for your own freedom going forward. Last year, we set a cap at $8,500 for some of those organizations. And just wanting to get your direction on how you would see those going forward.
I like the unallocated funds.
Uh-huh.
If it's up to me, everything would be unallocated. So did we not do the application process, right?
We have not done the
Okay.
application process. I do know of one opportunity that the Metro Opera has. So they, as you know, have been doing a study recently on where their future should lie, and they're still doing their analysis, but things are looking very favorable. That's remaining a pillar in our community for the long term and revitalizing their facilities is something that they might be looking for some assistance from Simpson, from us, from others to try to, and donors and whatnot, to try to meet their long-term needs. So that's one of the areas where unallocated might assist in that, along with the funds that we set aside. I know the National Balloon Classic has some significant concert increases this year that have been announced, and that's going to bring thousands and thousands of people into our community. It's the proportionality and what we have left. You don't necessarily have to answer this tonight, but I can send this out and maybe give you some time to think about it. Bring it back.
I think some of our discussions with one of those organizations we've had not necessarily on the part on the left, but on the pie chart on the right that some concerns about. My understanding is it takes a period of time to get out of that organization.
Right, so the organizations that we're tied to are Bravo, for which we get a really good return on investment.
Bravo's fine. I don't-
And the other is Catch Des Moines, for which we are trying to become a squeaky wheel. Yeah, and be a better partner, so. But that's a policy related decision, and you're right, it does take quite a long time to get step away from that if you did.
I guess I'd like to know if possible. If possible. What the return on our investment was with them. Some way to figure that out. Because that's exactly what we're supposed to use hotel motel tax for. And I gotta be honest, I'm not sure I see much of it.
Greg will, their CEO will be coming. I believe, Jackie, we were discussing like mid-April,
Maybe.
May, present. And that can be, then we can ask them if they have any of that.
Well, I guess you talked about all the things that come into Des Moines, but I mean, as far as what really spent and used and contributed here from that standpoint, I guess is something that I think if we, does anybody have anything that Catch Des Moines did? Think they maybe, did they talk about the National Balloon Classic at all, or did they?
National Balloon Classic is also a customer of theirs, and they did advertise on their behalf. I believe they sent some people to help at the disc golf.
Yeah, they did a lot, I thought, for disc golf.
Did they?
And but could we,
If there's some way we can quantify a dollar amount, that'd be.
It'd be a tough ask.
It is a tough ask.
I know when Steve went to the meeting a month or so ago, and you got the handout, right? And honestly, it did have more mentions of Indianola, more photos of Indianola than previous.
Well, that's good to hear.
They've been working with Pete's, I know, like a reviewer there, so maybe we're trying to get a little bit more action.
Well, as Ben said, sometimes squeaky wheel gets the grease, so.
Do we know if Amanda is still working with Greg?
she is, and really trying to get better utilization of that relationship, but it's something that needs to come from us as well. And we're just, we're only 10 miles to Des Moines, but it's 100 miles from Des Moines, so, it's one of those things. Perceptionally.
Tell my kids that story too. It's the same exact thing, and we might as well be living in New Mexico or somewhere. I do want to mention that, and I think I've maybe mentioned this to council as well, but I want to kind of mention this publicly, that I had a conversation with Ed at DOM. Do you remember his name? Nelson. He is the folks that's kind of the head of this new thing that we've gotten from them that shows reduction in our taxes. In my conversation with him, he did mention the fact that this was a form that was entirely prescribed by the state legislature. The 6 years I was in the legislature, I don't ever remember us specifically in legislation saying what had to be in a particular form. And when I asked him that question to reiterate, to make sure I didn't hear him incorrectly, he said, yes, he gave me some number that was in part of the legislation, and that form actually is part of the legislation. So there are some inaccuracies in that form, as you pointed out, particularly, and I don't think everyone's, is this the form you have in your sheets or not? Probably not. The one that the DOM sent out that we got a minus 0.8337. What they did is they tied $100,000 assessed value on both residential and commercial property and wanted our levy, current year certified levy, on what those numbers were. And the problem with that is that the commercial $100,000, the state legislature then in House File 718 also gave a residential rollback for the first $150,000 on commercial property. So that's not shown any way, shape, or form on this form. And my question to him was, and maybe to staff as well, is that minus 8.37% that we're showing supposedly that the change is gonna be a negative change in the taxes. That really the rollback that we experienced, because I think it went from 54 or whatever it was to 46, and that's eight percentage points essentially, and just kind of curious about that because there are flaws in this document, and this document is going to go out to every household in the city of Indianola as well as the county. County's gonna have to do the same thing, and so is the school district. The problem is this form has flaws in it, and he did not deny that. Did not deny that the form, what he said is you gotta read the small print, and they will have a thing on their website sometime in May or June telling people that this is what what it really means. And I said, well, that's really probably not very helpful for people, number one, that don't use the internet very much, which are older folks in some cases, and which don't bother to read small print. Oh, that's probably 90% of the people. So I think it's very misleading, and that is a fatal flaw. This not only House File 718, one more fatal flaw, but it's fatal flaw in the document today.
Thank you. I do appreciate the fact that you're letting me get into this Lamborghini and start driving slowly forward instead of starting off road. So thank you. And we're so excited, April 1st, to have our new senior budget analyst start. And we look forward to her. Great for our year. We'll make an official announcement once we can.
So the other question I have then is, we're gonna be able to have, you put up the prioritizations that we did in our retreat. And are we gonna have a chance to look at those and really kind of dig into that a little bit? The dollars we have available or don't have available, and figure out where we are on that.
We absolutely have to.
Yeah, we have to do
so
that.
You can have that. Of course, the public hearing is coming up on April 1st. I'm going to go to that really quick. Property tax levy hearing is April 1st. In a separate meeting on the same evening, we have to have like a 15-minute break in between meetings and another legislative change. Is setting the public hearing for the budget. We're going to have another budget presentation on April 15th, but if they're actually, I think it would be very healthy to either call a special meeting or special meetings or individual set of one-on-ones, whatever, to go through concerns and continue to address things going forward, so we can get ready for the budget hearing and adoption on April 22nd. With that said, you still can make amendments as you go along.
I think I don't know, my opinion is that we are gonna need to have another session where we can really dig into the nuts and bolts and stuff and go through that. That's
It
just.
may just need to be a separate meeting where you can not have anything else on the agenda. It's just a discussion.
Work session on the budget.
And I think that would probably be ideal to get that on our calendar sooner than later. That way also, just from a staff timing perspective, we're not all hitting you with the same meeting.
Uh-huh.
6 different ways, all do it at once,
Okay.
special meeting.
I know that we can make changes, but there are some things that once you do, you really can't roll back.
Right.
And also, once the public hears that you're gonna do something, it's kind of hard to change some things. They just hear go.
Sure. Absolutely.
And so on some things. Thank you, Ben.
Okay.
Appreciate it. All right, are there any other questions?
Email you the Mason City thing, but I need that.
We'll take like a quick 1-minute break and then our regular meeting.
90 seconds.
90 seconds. I'll keep the city council meeting for the city of Indianola for March 18th, 2024. If we would please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jackie, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Stones,
Present.
Brave,
Here.
Bushy,
Here.
Armstrong,
Here.
Beach, here, Richardson,
Present.
Mayor Erickson.
Present. Moving on for public comment, is there anyone that would wish to give it public comment? You can come forward to the lectern. We do have a special guest. Every time.
Yep,
We should do it during
perfect.
this time. But is it, I'm gonna say your last name. Corp. Okay, it was kind of how I thought. The Director of Operations from the Des Moines International Airport is here this evening, and in front of you are these cards where you can go and watch a video of the new terminal. So yeah.
Well, thank you, Mayor, council members, thanks for having me here tonight. I'll keep this short and sweet, but just wanted to come on behalf of the Des Moines Airport Authority and pass on our appreciation for the support of Indianola. We're continuing to move forward full steam with the new terminal project. We're expected to have some concrete in the ground for footings and steel coming out here in the next couple months. So full steam ahead. Really just wanted to express our appreciation. Obviously, the support of all the communities in the metro, including Indianola, is really instrumental in us being able to move this project forward. And we really do appreciate it. And with that, I do have a little bit of our appreciation. There's a project champion for the terminal project that I'd like to present to Indianola.
Good.
Right?
Yeah. Seems like a what?
Mayoral
The
thing.
mayoral.
Yeah, we could.
We'll
like
go
it.
over here and we can take a picture.
Guess what? You get to move, folks.
Do the awkward handshake.
Yep, and everybody's just like scattered from back there. Everybody's just watching us online.
stuff.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everything.
You.
Thank you for coming down.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Project on schedule, that's the question.
It is.
Okay.
To keep it that way.
We also
So you
appreciate
don't
your
have to worry about
support
those
with the
change order.
documents that you provide us
You don't
on the
have to
construction
change
manager
order.
at risk that we're trying to model. and
Construction manager
Thank you.
risk.
Happy to help with any way we can.
Yep.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Mayor, I do have one thing here, on the agenda, under council reports, if you give me an opportunity to talk to the legislative policy committee from the league.
Sure. Okay. Item 5 is the consent agenda. Can I get a first and second motion?
I would like to pull item L.
Mayor, could we also pull item E2 until later in the meeting?
E2 and L. Can I get a first and second motion with the exceptions of E2 and L?
Moved.
Okay. And Ben, do you want to give us a just brief run through on there?
Sure, we are setting a resolution setting a public hearing for approval first with regard to the first edition zoning change there. Some liquor licenses to approve, consideration of ordinance for that's the third reading for the fat oils and grease discharge. Third consideration for the rezoning of the commercial area and general industrial area south by on Second Avenue 2103 East. By Pickard Park there, a resolution approving engineering agreement with Snyder for stormwater improvements in North Y. A resolution approving an agreement with Snyder Associates for a traffic study in Jefferson Way. Resolution approving the U-Step funding agreement with Iowa Department of Transportation. This is for the new signal at Second Avenue and Buxton Street. That's one we've been having issues with. We're pulling L. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Approval for the purchase of transformers for the lift stations. This is for our wastewater department. And approval for submission of utility write-offs to the state set-off program for collection. Approving salary changes.
Any questions? Jackie?
Councilmember Stones, Wade,
Aye.
Bellamy,
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Beach. Richardson.
Aye.
Coming back to, so wait on E2.
We have a scheduled closed session. We just wanted to update the council on the status. We'd like to move forward into the closed session and talk about that one after.
And then come back, okay. I need a first and second motion on item L, resolution awarding the mowing contract. Okay. Doug,
Hello, how are you guys?
and how are you?
Mayor and Council, Doug Byland from Chief of Culture and Recreation. You have a background memo of kind of what we're looking at here. We had 13 companies, which was really good. With our staff evaluation of that, more than half of those were eliminated because they didn't have enough equipment and jobs that were required. The other things that we also have a little bit of special mowing circumstances depending on what time of year we are. We really like mowing on Thursdays and Fridays. We have special events they need to mow around. So as I told Councilman Richardson today, I have 1,000 disc golf banners around Pickard Park. They have to mow around for 2 weeks. Kind of things that we got to make sure of. So we did some checking of a couple of references. Some of them were good, some of them not so good. I didn't put that publicly in here. We had the top 2 companies that we had, ProCare from Altoona. I think you saw the number of approximately $311,000 over years. And the other company that we thought could is Woosley. $56,000 over 3 years. Even with that, we've had some struggles with mowing contracts over the years where companies come in and they thought they could do that and they couldn't do that our last 2 times. So staff's a little bit hesitant about that. We already know what we get with Woosley. They are local. So with that, our recommendation was to go with Woosley.
Doug and I did have a conversation today. The low bidder, you said, had a recommendation from West Des Moines that you. Correct. And my concern with Doug was twofold. Number one was that I don't want in the future to have businesses not bid on these contracts if we don't go with the low bidder. I mean, if they take the time and the effort to do it. I've been on both ends of this. I mean, I was in construction for a long time and just think that that can be an issue if you're not careful with that. The second thing I'm in my mind too, and Doug and I had a lot of good conversation and explained his reasoning behind this, is that every dollar I think right now we've got to really kind of be careful with as we move forward with 718, House File 718, and some of the things going on here too. Don't really want to go against staff recommendation. I know at one time we had a percentage here and mentioned this too, that used to be that if you had somebody local, you gave them a 5% or so on a bid, because they were local. I think you said we still have that policy, but there's no percentage in.
Right,
Is that
and
correct?
this is like 14.5%. So
And also, when I was in the construction side of things, we also had some bids out with the city of Des Moines for continued maintenance on different products. And we were one of maybe 8 different bidders, and a lot of times they would do is they take the low bid. But then they'd have number 2 as well, and if number 1 couldn't perform, number 2 was automatically brought in for that one time or whatever the case was. Or the contract was essentially away from number 1. And Doug's done that the last couple of times to his credit and to the staff's credit as well. I just have those concerns. I want to have a little bit of a discussion here if anybody has any other thoughts, and not trying to make a big deal here. I'm just saying we've got some concerns about money in the future and my concern about bidder and who we go with here.
I think the concerns on that always valid when it comes to money. The other thing is I think that Woosley and his team, they know the expectations of the city. I remember when the previous company had it, spent a lot of time online as a staff, kind of combating that the previous company was blowing specifically over by Parks and Rec, the grass and since Woosley has come back on, I think our parks have looked excellent and we haven't had to worry about that. They're not blowing it in. They know what the expectation is. And so I think we save on some time from that too.
I don't disagree with you, Mayor. I'd love to give Woosley the contract, but at the same time, I think if Doug would have told me that the recommendation for number one was tepid or at the best or not a recommendation, they would hire the person. And I think that is my concern as well. But moving to the other concern though, what about the bids in the future? That's the other side of it.
Was the other company, if I'm reading this right, they did have the contract, correct? Yeah, the
Company
lowest
that's-
bidder,
No. No, they did not.
as in the past 3-year contract, the
Different-
lowest bidder seemed not seem
Wasn't
to be able to. fill.
them specifically. The lower bidders at that time that we contracted with that couldn't perform the services. And they were, in this case, two different companies from each 3 years ago was a different company than 6 years ago.
So
They've stepped in twice.
ProCare comes recommended, they understand our timing, our scope, all that, right?
Yeah,
And they're $45,000 cheaper.
45 over 3 years. Okay.
Yes.
15 a year.
And Woolsey does it now. Correct. I appreciate. bringing it up.
job.
Cause like I look at the numbers and I go. Woolsey probably knows something that, you know, maybe the other place doesn't when you're looking at where the increases are.
The work, what, the work facility, what was the big one, right? Which is a large facility.
Yeah, and so I'm like, do they know something that maybe the other place doesn't know and how to do that work? And that's where, I don't know. Like,
And I appreciate they,
Run into
you know, they employ local people and local companies, so I have that appreciation too, and just knowing the consistency we have with them.
yeah, and if they break out the park system, Pickard Park is the largest, of course. It takes them an entire 6 hours to do Pickard every Thursday or Friday, so.
I'm not arguing any of those points.
Yep.
oh yeah, no, I know.
And I'm not, again, think that they do a great job, believe me. Concern still is reputation of not taking the low bidder for whatever reason. Am I off base here? That's my question.
I think the key of that statement is the low qualified bidder, right?
Exactly.
It's not just the low bidder.
Right. And I agree with
All
that.
bids are created equal, but it is in this competitive market, it is challenging if you do develop a reputation. Turning away people with good reputations and good complete bids, and I would much prefer local, but this is you said 14.5%. You're not talking. You're right, most companies do, even private companies have something that says, hey, my threshold for using local. This, you know, if it's within this number, but 14.5% is pretty far above that.
They do have, you know, a recommendation from City of West Des Moines.
The last two that we had come in and weren't able to do the job. They come as highly recommended as this.
Not necessarily, at that point, we know they have equipment, we know that they know what the job is required, they tell us they're going to do it, and they have that. That's as good as we can get.
Do we know anymore? I'm trying to find the website for this other company. Can't find a website. We don't know how long they've been in business.
Relatively new.
They're relatively new, which, and that's a concern, because again, like you said, I appreciate your guys' recommendation, because this is a big project.
This is tough because of, these are,
And I appreciate, obviously, both of you have to say too on the side of money. We are in uncharted waters.
we know that. We're worried about that too.
I mean, is Weasley gonna bail us out a third time?
I don't know.
I mean, I have the same concern with, it's $45,000 is savings.
He is the company that has bailed us out the last 2 times, right? So, I mean,
We did take one of his private streets off with from him too.
it's,
Maybe it's important to also point out the amount of staff time that was involved in trying to get the companies to perform and then going through the effort to bring Woolsey back in and they did bail us out a couple of times on that. And there was a significant amount of effort. I actually remember the joke of when it was like one of my first week or something like that, you were trying to cite Charlie or Charlie trying to cite you because the grass was as tall as it was. Can't remember exactly what the joke was, but something about tall. And
See that picture?
Can't imagine what that joke was.
but what I was really coming down to is there was a significant amount of staff time involved in trying to get that. When you have a contractor that's underlined.
Well, and I'll add that it is under what we budgeted for. Obviously, as a city, we don't have the resources, the equipment, the people
No,
to
absolutely not.
do it. So they're doing it less than what we could do it.
I would suggest in the future, though, that maybe we do look at that policy on a percentage for local. And the other thing would be that we look at a first and second and see if, there may be times that something comes up that, maybe have a lot of rain and grass is growing like crazy and make it maybe number two can come in and do something or help out with whatever portion of that or and deduct it from that other contract or whatever you got, however you can do that. I don't know legally what the answer to that is. I do know that when my company worked for the city of Des Moines, if for some reason the first bidder couldn't get in there, they would bring in number two, pay them at the same rate. If they would do it for the same rate that number one did it, pay them on those individual basis for those kinds of things. So just some thoughts on that too in the future. I don't know where you want to go on this.
Any other questions? Jackie?
Councilmember Armstrong?
Aye.
Beach?
Aye.
Richardson?
No,
Stones? Wade?
Aye.
Dalby?
Aye.
All right. Moving on into council reports, Councilmember Richardson has an update from the League of Cities Legislative Committee.
okay, so the Legislative Policy Committee from the Iowa League of Cities met via Zoom this morning. The regulation on parking meters, which doesn't affect Indianola, is a dead bill. And there's another one that doesn't affect the city of Indianola either. And so those two are dead, but what is very active and alive right now is still the stormwater regulation bill. I shared with council members the information that Charlie put together on that, what that would cost if we had a project in Indianola that was asking for 1.7, Charlie? $1.7 million to do the stormwater. How that would play out if it was spread among all the ratepayers or the households in Indianola. And Charlie, if I'm not mistaken here, that it comes down, if we did it by citizen, it comes down to $106.80 per citizen or $289.20 per house, 28 cents per household. So this bill has significant impact on residents in a community, not only Indianola. That's for a particular project at a particular size. Every project is going to be different based on the topography of that particular project. Obviously, flat ground is a lot easier when you do stormwater than if you've got rolling in topography, and as we know, rolling topography in Indianola. So this information was shared with council members, as I said, but essentially what this would either have to be through property taxes, I'm guessing, or some other, or stormwater revenue, some way, shape or form, pay for it in that aspect. And so if this legislation does pass, then developers could come back and ask or say, you got to put in the stormwater here and here's your cost. And on a project that's over at $1.5 million, about 1.7 or so, you're looking at a significant amount per household in that particular case. What I would suggest staff and council or anybody that's in the audience or anybody that's listening in, it's in the Senate right now. Contact your state senator, the Senator Garrett. Let them know that what this would do. One of the comments that's always made in some of the discussions with some of our representatives is that all they heard was about property tax increases, and this is a big one that goes through. And I don't think they understand that. The other side is pushing this as affordable housing. We all know that whether or not the developers have to put this money into the project or we pay for it as a city, we're going to get market rate for whatever they build, whether it's rentals or houses or whatever the case is. So I would encourage everyone that is part of this and understands this to go ahead and vote told the senator and expressed the fact that, you don't want him to vote for this.
Do we know when the Senate's,
It's on the Senate calendar. It can be brought up at any time. I don't believe it was brought up today. I think it could be Tuesday, Wednesday, it could be next week, it could be, but still, I think we need to keep it very clear in the mind of our representatives what's going on there. Senate File 2205 on hiring regulations about civil service. They could suspend that for a period of time if there's some requirements. I think you've looked at that, if I'm not mistaken, Chief, and you're okay with what the changes are that they're making on that, and the league is in favor of that particular one. What they're not in favor of is Senate File 2325, which takes away the Civil Service Review Board, I think it is, in certain cases, and drop that out. But again, we can talk about that. And final citing bill is on the Senate floor. That's the bill that requires the cities would not have any really say in what could go on certain aspects of certain areas of your community. Residential, we couldn't, for instance, say you have to have a certain type of siding or cladding. The concern there is that it could be anything. It could be anything from sheet metal to vinyl siding. It's called a vinyl siding bill, but that's more about telling Charlie's department that we can't put anything together that says you're gonna have certain kinds of requirements. So for instance, right now, I believe we still do have some standards on the highway commercial. Is that correct, Charlie?
so currently on residential, we don't have design standards on single family and two family. We do on row homes, townhomes, and all multifamily.
Right.
My understanding of the bill would be that it would disallow us from regulating any design standard on any multifamily row home or anything like that.
Up to
So
12 units.
yeah,
Anything over 12 units, we could regulate.
yeah. So I mean, a lot of confusion, I think, even how that applies too, but just with some of the discussion I think we've had on Deer Run and Emerald Bay over the last few weeks is, you know, a lot of the citizens have been very concerned with what is going to be the look of these units when they go in. And I think one of the things that we've been able to tell them, at least from our office's standpoint, is we have regulations in place to control that. Don't worry, it's not going to look like, you know, some of the older ones that we have in town right now. And obviously this bill would limit our ability to make that true. So.
Right. And one of the concerns, I did have somebody speak out about this, is if we had a highway commercial and we did a commercial underneath and residential above, we would really have no way to control what's above that side of that. So they could have basically put about anything they wanted to on that siding on our main thoroughfares through the community. So that's my report. If you got any questions, let me know.
I have actually two really quick, because I haven't followed it as closely as I could because of the budget, but when you brought up Emerald Bay and whatnot, I can see the state legislature taking away our ability on an ability to put an ordinance or regulation in. But when it's a negotiated development agreement, is that also apply to that? Or because they're giving us none, we're giving and taking.
Right.
And they're accepting the regulations.
Doug, I don't know what you know about that, but I would assume that if we are negotiating that as part of a development agreement, we can still get that in there.
So if they're getting some special treatment and densities and whatnot, we can hopefully still have that in there. And the second thing is, can property developers themselves still regulate through CCNR or code covenants and restrictions or HOA requirements that sets a certain standard
Great question.
that we don't necessarily impose, but they impose upon themselves because they want to have a certain standard involved.
I'm almost positive that's specifically stated in the bill, yeah, they can.
So you can still help maintain a standard, it's just not imposed upon you, it's self-regulated by your own development.
Right.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Well, and that's something we probably need to check out in legislation, because sometimes they do preemptions anyway and something gets added. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Moving on to the manager's report. I don't have anything, so.
Great
Yeah.
spring break.
Yeah.
It was a very good spring break for my college kid to go back to college. So moving on to public consideration, under old business, the levy authority. I need a first and second motion to open the public hearing regarding a pre-levy resolution.
Moved.
Second.
Second.
Jackie?
Councilmember Dalby?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Beach,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Stones. Aye. Wade.
I,
I'm sorry, Mayor and Council, I should have been prepared to have that open. This is, this is a, do we, Michael Maloney on the,
We don't have anything up.
okay.
Yep, I'm here.
Michael, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Oh, good. I'm so glad that you're here because I've been having other thoughts, budgets and whatnot. So we have Michael Maloney, our financial advisor with us, talking about this vehicle purchase program. I alluded to this in the, oops. Protect up the memo. I alluded to this in the budget discussion that we had earlier, that we are looking to acquire vehicles on a 5-year plan. Of course, we have, there's some certain requirements that we have from a spend down, which is we have to spend down the bond proceeds within a 3-year period. So some of our purchases need to be timed appropriately to do that. But basically having a 5-year amortization schedule to pay off the vehicles that we plan to purchase as a need for that 5-year period. Michael, jump in and tell us all about it.
Yeah, sure. I'll be as brief as I can here. The short story is the pre-levy resolution that you're looking to include, so you could potentially certify this element inside the fiscal 25 budget, requires that the city set and hold a public hearing in time to adopt this pre-levy resolution that your bond attorney, Allers and Cooney, has prepared for you by the April 15th due date for the budget. It does not obligate the city to borrow any funds. It's basically reserving the right to make this borrowing, and because our budget process is ahead of the fiscal year, in the event we do borrow, we want to make sure we've got a placeholder for that repayment. The structure, as Ben mentioned, was a concept of including those vehicle and equipment purchases over a 5-year period for financing. But the goal of that was really to help set the fiscal 25 budget. Decisions about the total amount, the actual amortization, and whether or not to move forward with the borrowing will be reserved till a future date by council. So this doesn't obligate anything. This is just allowing flexibility for the future for the council. And the public hearing is simply setting an upward bound for the borrowing amount. So this is something, because of HF 718, that many communities are undertaking maybe for the first time or first time in a long time as part of the fiscal 25 budget. So this is just another tool the city has in their toolbox as part of the fiscal 25 budget planning. Happy to elaborate, Ben, further to the benefit of the council, or answer any questions anyone might have.
I'm still struggling a little bit with whole thought of borrowing today for a car I'm gonna buy in 5 years. I'm honestly that's kind of where I'm at. So, you know, we've paid for our cars as we've saved up the money, right? So we still have funds for those vehicles we have planned for in 25 and 26, right?
No, we receive money in each year through our property taxes, through our levy. We allocate those funds to make the purchases.
So we just haven't allocated any funds towards new purchases of vehicles.
Right, because it would be coming in the next levy that we're now not able to increase and be able to utilize. And so this is a way for us to utilize a different levy, the debt service levy, by which we can still make the annual purchases and paying it on an annual plan. It's just that we have to be more thoughtful in what vehicles we're purchasing and over what time period. And of course, you are correct, there's an interest rate calculation in that whole thing, that we're both utilizing our credit card and we're utilizing or paying interest.
I struggle to run, I mean, you kind of talked about it in the January, right? Of not really something that we wanted to entertain, and when I look at the list, I see no vehicle for a locate truck for a position we haven't even agreed to hire yet. We haven't seen a budget. We're saying we can't pay for something, we don't even know what our budget is. Like, is it appropriate at this time to even consider this until we can get into a budget? probably $3.7 million for that levy when we don't even know what we're doing yet, you know, so we're going, can't afford to buy these vehicles. We don't even know. We haven't seen it, and I feel like everything I'm hearing from a budget standpoint, we're blaming House File 718 on. And the more I keep hearing it, the more I go, maybe we should have had our hands slapped, and maybe cities should have gotten their hands slapped and restricted on how much they can spend. Cause maybe it was getting out of hand a little bit, and just struggle looking at it going, I don't know what our budget is. I don't know how much money we have. The vehicles that we don't have positions for yet. We don't even know if we're selling a cement truck yet. That we've asked about.
We're working on it.
I know, but when I look at this, I'm like 3.7, we're committed to having to buy vehicles for that if we go through with it.
Correct me if I'm
We're
wrong.
not obligated. It's a worst case scenario.
And this is a 5-year plan. Yeah, jump in, Michael.
Yeah, this merely allows you to have the authority to make that decision in the future. It doesn't obligate borrowing of even $1. Just want to be clear, that's the same for any public hearing you guys have. The timing of this, and the reason folks are like the city and other communities are doing this now for the budget is to help with that whole budget planning process. So try to be conservative, try to use a multi-year consideration with the potential purchases. That all needs to be refined, not just through budget, but the ultimate borrowing if and when that does occur in the future.
And if the council were to so choose, Michael, to alter that 5-year plan of purchasing of vehicles, but still utilize those dollars for the purchase of vehicles, maybe they're a different vehicle, we would have the flexibility to do that. It's my understanding as well.
Correct, and the dollar amounts can change as well. So the vehicles or the dollar amounts, it could be anywhere from $0 to this 3.75 million upward limit.
So this.
I was just gonna say, and then as we're finalizing the budget, if they decide that they don't want to borrow any of this, we can change that amount down to 0. We just couldn't add it at the last minute unless we did all of these steps.
This is just government, right? And this matrix is just your guys' best guess on giving us that.
It allows you to use
Everything
this
in-
tool if you
Everything in
decide
here
to.
could change. These could get twice as many vehicles and everybody else could get none, or vice versa, like it's all valuable, we're just suffering through government timing.
Correct.
Is there a surcharge for setting it up, even if we don't use it?
Michael, do you want to talk about that at all?
I perhaps your bond attorney, I won't speak for them, may have some modest charges for that, but it'd be similar to whatever type of legal work you do for those folks. That'd be the only ones involved. Our firm only is paid if you actually go through with anything, but that's it. It should be very modest, if anything.
So if I'm looking at the vehicle capital improvement plan, in fiscal year 25, we're looking at $1,02,194, right? What I'm looking at.
I believe so. We took the prior plan and maybe Jackie can talk a little bit to this a little more than I can, but it's in the.
No, I'm just, the numbers all I'm really concerned about right now. If we don't, right now, and back to Josh's point, yeah, this is government legal stuff we gotta do right now. Doesn't mean we're gonna do that. The point I wanna make here, I think, is we don't do this. If we wanna still buy all those vehicles, we have to figure out somewhere in our budget, $1,02,194.
Correct. And you don't have the ability to.
Raise taxes to do it, we're gonna have to cut $1,02,194. Okay. And then the same in fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27, 8 and 29. So I agree what Ron says, I hate paying for something ahead of time. Again, we're not doing this yet. Somewhat with Steve as well. And we may not end up buying all these things. I mean, that's just part of the process, and it's part of the budgeting process too. We understand that. But I don't want people to forget the fact that don't do it this way. We need to find $1,02,194 in the budget.
Or the inverse would be that over the next 2 years, it's 1.6, one more year and further understanding what budget's gonna be at. Maybe you do some of that 1 million this year and try to tackle a bigger number next year when we have better understanding. And that levy opportunity would be just as available to us next year as this year. Unless there's another new house file that we don't. Josh.
The world can always change. This is really just setting you up to get the flexibility to move forward, and you could borrow a lesser amount if you so chose.
Is there an expiration date? So let's say we don't borrow any this year, but then fiscal year 26, we decide, okay, now we need to purchase some vehicles. Is this GO still available to us?
Michael, it's my understanding that we would need to restart the process, but it would still be available to us. Is that correct?
Yeah, you'd have the hearing held, so I don't think you'd need a separate hearing. I think you could do a new pre-levy resolution then, in that case. The public hearings typically, there's not really an expiration on that, but I just think it's sort of a reasonable standard. I don't think you'd want to go and borrow for these vehicles, 5 years from now, right? Is 3 reasonable? Maybe. Is next year okay? Possible, probable. I just think each budget year, if you want to take the step of pre-levy authority, that's what you'd need to re-up a year from now, if you're doing it for the same project.
And the urgency of us doing it now is because of the whole letting setting period of time that we're in right now. We're in that window. That if we're gonna do anything this year, we have to at least set ourselves up to be able to have a plan to do it. If you decide not to, you decide. Or if you just decide right now not to, you can do that too. That may be holding off on some purchases of vehicles.
Questions? Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Jackie?
Councilmember Stones,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Selby,
Aye.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Beach,
Aye.
Richardson.
Need a first and second motion on a resolution instituting proceedings to take additional action for the issuance of not to exceed $3.75 million in general obligation bonds or capital loan notes.
Moved.
Jackie?
Councilmember Dalby,
Aye.
Armstrong,
No.
Beach,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Stones,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Moving on, I need a first and second motion on a resolution authorizing the issuance of levying a tax for the payment therefore of.
Again, this is just a procedural thing, is that correct? We're not locking us into anything, so moves in.
Second? Jackie?
Councilmember Stones,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Armstrong,
No.
Beach, Richardson.
Moving on to item 2, New Heights Church Alley vacation. Need a first and second motion on a public hearing regarding an application for the right-of-way vacation and conveyance of a portion of alley located at east of 100 block South First Street and west of 100 block of South Jefferson Way, Indianola, Warren County, Iowa. There's a second?
Second.
Thank you. Jackie?
Councilmember Beach,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Stones,
Aye.
Ray,
Aye.
Dalby,
Aye.
Armstrong.
Ellie, is this you?
Give me 1 second. Gotta get this up. There we go. All right. New Heights Church has submitted a vacation request to dedicate an alley located east of the 100 block of South First Street and west of the 100 block of South Jefferson Way. Portion of alley we propose to be vacated is only those portions abutting the New Heights Church property, and the alley is running north and south. You can see on the screen here above the church on the left-hand side of that yellow area there. The alley is the yellow area, and then New Heights Church also does own that property on the right of that yellow area, which includes their parking lot and then a garage that they use for storage. There are also various utilities located in this alley. Council's probably familiar with this, but when that happens, we do typically dedicate a public utility easement on that area before the vacation is completed.
Looking at the findings of approval that are laid out in code, first we need to determine if there's a need for public use. We did note in the staff report that if easements are retained for utility and infrastructure located within the subject area, then there is no additional need for public use, maintenance at the public's expense. Or excuse me, and maintenance at the public expense is no longer justified. Second one is reasonable access to adjacent properties. No adjacent property owners are utilizing the alleyway to gain reasonable access to their properties, and as such, the disposal of public ownership may be justified. With that, the Planning and Zoning Commission has reviewed this vacation request, and they did recommend approval as submitted. If there are any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer them, and I'll just throw this map on the screen here if there's any discussion.
Questions?
Is that an alley to the north that runs east-west?
Yep, there's the one that runs east and west is an alley, and then this alley actually continues a little bit further north than that. And next block up is actually this building.
And the city maintains those two?
Yes.
Do you know if the church is gonna do anything to block off?
There's been some discussion that we've had with them at the staff level. I know they're planning on resurfacing the parking lot. They've talked about barricading it as well too. I think ultimately for them, it really comes down to a safety thing. They see a lot of traffic moving through here when they are having sessions at the church, things like that. So again, they're working with our staff right now just to kind of go through what actually needs to be done to do that.
Can we get a first and second motion to close the public hearing?
So moved?
Jackie?
Councilmember Armstrong. Beach.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Stones.
Aye.
Ray.
Aye.
Dalby.
Aye.
I need a first and second motion on first consideration of an ordinance vacating the right of way for an alley located east of the 100 block of South First Street and west of the 100 block South Jefferson Way, Iowa, Warren County, Iowa.
Moved.
Second.
Any other questions?
Charlie, just for my own edification, that alley on the north side of the property, are there utilities in that alley as well?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. I would
No,
imagine
I didn't
there's
mean-
probably something there. So I know for sure that there is a sanitary sewer line that runs north and south there. I don't believe it runs east and west. Yeah, I've been looking at Jared. Jared would know. Chances are there's probably electricity or maybe even fiber utility located in there would be my guess. But I without looking at the maps, I really don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Apologize.
I apologize for the question.
You're
I
fine.
wasn't know ahead of time.
Jackie?
Councilmember Stones.
Aye.
Ray.
Aye.
Dalby.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Beach.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
All right, moving under new business and then moving on to other business, city manager's report from Manager Reeves.
It's been a wonderful winter, great weather. Couple of days of winter, so I guess we're
It has been a great winter.
experiencing the cold and whatnot, but
Ron even shaved his beard.
Yeah.
I know, winter's over.
It is Ron shaves his beard. I mean, I didn't see my shadow, so I shaved it off.
with that said, we do really appreciate our public safety and our public works and keeping our streets clear and keeping us safe on the roads and whatnot. It's been a busy spring break week working on budget. We hope to get you more information days ahead. And I think there's really not more than that to report. Got a lot of people out, a lot of people covering.
Great. Moving on, I need a first and second motion to enter into closed session in accordance with Iowa Code Section 21.51C to discuss strategy with legal counsel and matters that are presently in litigation or where litigation is imminent, where its disclosure would be likely to prejudice or disadvantage the position of the governmental body in that litigation.
So moved.
And Jackie?
Councilmember Armstrong.
Aye.
Beach.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Stones.
Aye.
Ray.
Aye.
Dalby.
Aye.
Great, we'll take a 2-minute break and room clear out.